It honestly surprises me, but a lot of you guys keep asking me why am I maining the Outlaw Rogue? Why isn't it Subtlety Dal? Why won't you play Assassination? Why in the world would you be playing Outlaw Rogue? I was pretty sure that I made it pretty clear about my reasoning for going Outlaw in the past since the beta. I did cover all 3 specs of Rogue while on the beta, but it was much easier to do so because you had all 3 artifact weapons fully leveled up, so you didn't really have the damage differences. But in Legion, you have to go ham with 1 spec in order to level up your artifact weapon to its finest, spending all or as many as possible of your artifact talents as you can into that 1 weapon in order to make it the best weapon and the best spec in the game. So I'm going to be making a video of why I decided to go with Outlaw Rogue with my personal reasoning for PvP in Legion. This is again my own personal reasoning, so these are just my own opinions. So without further ado, let's get into the video. But first things first, I just want to mention I feel that Subtlety Rogue has probably the best of both worlds. First of all, it has decent sustain damage, great mobility, great burst, as well as decent amount of CC in order to put it ahead of the other specs. Subtlety Rogue is probably most arguably the best rogue spec for PvP, as it is consistent and reliable. I am not playing Subtlety Rogue because of all these things are not as important for me. The viability and all. I like having fun with what I play, and sometimes it might not be the most viable option, but that doesn't bother me honestly, because I used to play Combat Rogue back in Pandaria. I didn't play it because it was good. To be honest, Combat Rogues were kind of terrible in Pandaria. It was a garbage spec that was completely outclassed by Subtlety. But I like the 8-second stun, the killing spree, and the Bandit's Gal, red buff, yellow buff, green buff mechanic. I liked it so much that it kept me playing the game and enjoying it. I liked it so much that my greatest accomplishment was taking that garbage ass spec all the way to 2k rating back in Pandaria. Of course 2k is nothing really amazing, but I liked the spec so much it was too hard for me to give it up. Now Combat Rogue going into an Outlaw Rogue comes out to be, I feel like, a more fun spec. You get a different playstyle which is activated by your basic abilities, so a lot like what a Combat Rogue was like. You have a mix of ranged and melee spells that function seamlessly together, so the playstyle ends up being a ton of fun to experience in World of Warcraft. Outlaw Rogue is a pirate, so having a nice theme for your spec compared to what Combat had, which didn't really have a theme, having a theme for your spec is pretty sweet when it comes to class design and class fantasy. I'm a bit of a WoW nerd. Not only do I play the game for gear and arena rating and overall the epic loots and the biggest EP ever, but I also like the game for the creative output that it provides for me. As someone who makes YouTube videos, having such an inspiration behind the spec is a ton of help when making videos. The CC component of the spec is probably the best in my opinion. So much variety of CC to play around with gives you so many ways to deal with so many classes in WoW. And honor talents provide you even more CC based options, which is super nice for PvP. Having lots of CC for many different situations and I guess many different characters gives you a feeling of control and makes you feel a little bit skillful when you pull off some crazy CC chain, locking down anyone at a whim. The range stun is probably my favorite part of the spec. Being able to stun a foe at a distance counters the movement and ability of an Outlaw Rogue, being tied only to Grappling Hook, which allows you awesome plays against basically any class of foe. The Grappling Hook as well is probably one of my favorite parts. I feel like I shouldn't even have to explain it, but Grappling Hook on its own is one of the coolest mechanics in the game. I use the spell not only for some crazy PvP moments, but also while exploring Legion in general and leveling zones. I have climbed hills and mountains all the way up with this ability, and it's kind of fun exploring the game with a spec that is best suited for it. I of course like the damage of an Outlaw Rogue and how the spec is played in general for PvP. They made the finishers a bit more beefier, so getting finishers feels like you're playing a Subtlety or Warlords of Draenor. And the damage is super nice because that is how you burst, is via your finishers. And on the other hand, you have your auto attacks, mastery, and saber slashes that still continue to provide great sustained damage for PvP. Overall, I feel like Outlaw Rogue has a great combination of CC, great combination of damage and different varieties of damage that I like, has a really cool class fantasy, and is just a very unique spec. Again, it might not be the best and the most viable spec in terms of PvP. It is currently one of the better specs for PvE for sure though, as I can tell just from playing the game. I also like the RNG buff mechanic for the spec. One of the things that I like back in combat is a weird mechanic that not everybody enjoyed or not everybody liked. And one of the weird mechanics of a combat rogue from back in the day was the insight mechanic, especially back in Pandaria. It was for a lot of players a bit too much of a ramp up based ability, and they didn't enjoy the ramp up mechanic. Just like most players liked the guaranteed damage numbers you would get with subtlety rogues, especially during Pandaria. And at the time you couldn't argue. Whenever as a subtlety rogue you want to burst, you just press Shadow Blades, you would get your Shadow Dance up, and you burst it in a lockdown. In most cases you could literally just throw down a smoke bomb, then a mage and a rogue would burst you down in a smoke bomb and there's nothing you can do about it. And it was GG, it was it, and a lot of players enjoyed the reliability that subtlety rogues provide. And currently subtlety rogues still continue to provide this reliability, and Outlaw Rogue has this RNG buff mechanic where you can get between 1, 2, 3 or 6 buffs, and there's 6 buffs in general overall. Some buffs you can apply, some buffs you can't apply. You don't really have too much control over the buffs that you get. You don't get any control over how many buffs you get. But I like this mechanic because it is unique. I think it's interesting enough for me to be able to play the spec and continue playing it, because there's so many things you can do with this mechanic. For example, your playstyle is going to be different of others. Your goals that you're trying to accomplish in an Outlaw Rogue are going to be different of others. Your overall theme and just the feel of the spec is going to feel a lot different. So you are going to feel a little bit different from what an Assassination Rogue is trying to do, what a Subtlety Rogue is trying to accomplish and whatnot. And I just like the uniqueness of that. Just the fact that you're the only spec that does what you do. And that is enough for me to keep playing it. But that's really it that I have for you guys in terms of why I'm going to main Outlaw. I am maining Outlaw. I am leveling a side character just so I can get some artifact weapon and artifact traits as Assassination and Subtlety for you guys, so I can make some Assassination and Subtlety videos without having a lacking PvP weapon. But until then, guys, hopefully you will enjoy the Outlaw Rogue content that I have, and hopefully you are looking forward to the future Subtlety and Assassination Rogue content. This is my list for the reasons why I play Outlaw Rogue. I love the spec. I love literally everything about it, and I think it's just like one of the greatest things the Blizzard has added in the game. And I can precisely remember when I was streaming and I said this is the worst idea ever that Blizzard has ever come up with. And I am eating my words. I just have to eat my words, and I like the spec a ton. I'm actually gonna go get this video rendered, go play some Outlaw and BGs, and while I do that, hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.